Welcome to Teaching Orchestra. In this episode, I'm going over how I teach Winter Solstice by Todd Parrish. And before we start teaching the left hand, I think it's important that we teach the concept of anchor notes to our students so that they can learn the patterns faster. This is also good preparation for Baroque music because there's a lot of pattern-based writing in Baroque music, usually in the form of sequences, but there's also anchor notes too. Sequences are usually a bit harder, whether they're real or tonal sequences, but the concept is the same because you're taking, in this case, a 4-note pattern and grouping it into a single block of notes. In psychology, this is called chunking. An example of this would be to group articles of clothing together when you're getting ready in the morning. You put on your shirt, pants, shoes, and socks. Now, to relate this to anchor notes, 3 of the 4 categories stays the same and 1 changes. So it could be that you wear jeans, white crew socks, and Nikes every day, but you put on a different graphic tee. This makes it easier, right? You don't have to think about 3 of the 4 because that's your anchor. And all you really have to worry about is the shirt. Well, that's the same thing here in Winter Solstice. We have a lot of left-hand patterns to learn, but for a lot of it, we only have to worry about 1 note, the first note of the series, and the other 3 are the anchor notes. I wrote this teaching companion to help teach the anchor notes, and the most prevalent set of anchor notes are B-A-B. In fact, if you go through this, there are 8 B-A-B anchor exercises because there are 8 B-A-B patterns. So B-A-B stays the same, and you've got a note that changes, and it's the first note. I teach this to my students first because there's 8 of them, and if you just do these, you're going to learn about 50% of the 8th notes in this piece. So which note changes? E, G, and C. Those are the notes that change. So it's E, B-A-B, G, B-A-B, and C, B-A-B. If you want to create a visual for your students to help them learn, you can color code these patterns. You can make E light blue, G orange, and C red. Okay, that's only 3, right? So where do I get 8? Well, that's from the octaves. Sometimes the first note changes octaves, like high E, low E, high G, low G, or open G. And sometimes the anchor notes are in a different octave. And you can get 8 different combinations of those in Winter Solstice, and those are the combinations that I use here. And 8 might seem a lot, but it's 4 times less that you're doing here, learning these anchor notes by chunking, and otherwise you'd have to teach 32 different notes instead of just 8 groups of notes. It might take a while to woodshed to get a few of them up to tempo, but once you learn 1 or 2 of them, the others are going to be learned much more quickly because the anchor notes don't change except by the octave, and you'll be flying through these exercises in a week or 2. The other anchor note patterns are harder because they're used less frequently in Winter Solstice, and when there's fewer iterations of the pattern and they don't have the octave duplications like the B-A-B patterns, it's going to have to take a little bit more repetition in the teaching companion to prepare them. So what are the other patterns? We've got the D-A-D anchor exercises, the E-D-E, and those are the last of the neighboring anchor notes. So if they've already mastered B-A-B, they should be able to learn these pretty quickly because these are neighboring patterns, right? It starts on a note, it goes down, then it goes back up. The next 6 patterns are not neighboring based. They're stepwise based, and some of them have some leaps in them. So then the next pattern is you've got C-B-G, and then you've got C-B-G, then you've got B-A-G. Now we get some all stepwise. And then this one's stepwise too, B-A-G. So those are all the anchor note patterns in Winter Solstice, and it's a lot. So to prioritize, if you learn B-A-B, you do those exercises, you're going to learn the bulk of them in Winter Solstice. And I would prioritize those, and I would practice those quite a bit and make sure that they're really well learned. And I have a friend, and he's a professional guitar player, and he practices probably like 12 hours a day, and he does this every day, rain or shine, no matter what. And if we're hanging out at his place, his alarm will go off on his watch, and he'll excuse himself, and he'll go practice for like an hour, like just in the middle of us hanging out. He'll say like, I got to go practice right now, and he'll just go down to his basement and start practicing. And I, being a musician, I can't help but hear what he's playing and notice what he's working on. And a lot of what he does is anchor notes, and he'll start with scales, and he'll just play the scales up and down, and then he'll take each scale degree and he'll play around with it using anchor notes. It's like the layer above the scales, right? Like the meta of the scale studies. And I thought that the Schradik was child cruelty when I was in middle school, and I thought that the carved flesh was abusive. But what that guy every day is like next level medieval torture. So the last thing that I want you to do to your students is use one of my teaching companions to be a symbol for hatred. So please use these exercises sparingly. Don't just go through them and woodshed them every single day. Please just pick like one or two, and total time in your rehearsal, no more than 5 to 10 minutes a day, or else this is going to backfire and one of your students is going to become a character from a Voltaire novel. All right, so please don't unleash that upon the world. It's better just to understand that we apply these concepts to become a better musician rather than to barbarize ourselves and each other. And the goal is to get them to recognize the patterns so that they can do this independently, and they can create their own practice routines, and they can break down their own melodic patterns by themselves without you, instead of becoming mindless robots sent from the future to play anchor notes and kill Sarah Connor. In my next video, we're going to look at some spots that aren't anchor notes, but are fundamental-based patterns, and we're going to go over some strategies on how to teach them, and I hope to see you then.